which team in the Big Ten do you think is more like? Let me rephrase that. Which team in the Big Ten do you think is going to be the greatest beneficiary with the new conference scheduling? Like Maryland or maybe Michigan State, who's been behind the big three of the Big Ten the last couple of years that has the potential to break through now if they get like a good break in the scheduling.
It sucks that you said outside the top three because it really is Penn State. They have no protected rivalry. So their schedule rotates every year. No protected rivalry. I would say outside of them, it's probably Rutgers or Maryland, if I'm being honest, because their only protected rivalry is each other. So they're not guaranteed to have a tough draw. I would say it's one of them. If you include the traditional top three, I would say it's Penn State. But those three teams overall. Good question. Really good question, I think. A team that has had tough schedules in the past in the West, and now probably still will, because I think they have a protected rivalry with Iowa, and I think they have one. I forget outside of Iowa, but it might be with Minnesota, and they might also have one with Wisconsin. Nebraska. You said you wanted to talk about if Nebraska is dead forever. Now, I have a lot of Nebraska fans. Oh, we got a super chat. Let me find it here. Chris Lane. Hey guys, sorry, late and busy, but go Bucks. Well, Chris, I hope that you either heard and appreciated my defense of Ryan Day or that you just didn't hear it at all. But yeah, go Buckeyes until them and Michigan play again, at which point I will want you to lose 100-0. Go Buckeyes. And thank you for the $5. I really appreciate it. Chris has been very supportive with Super Chats on the channel and Patreon. Speaking of which, you can find the link to my Patreon page via the link in the description if you want to support the channel. And you can find the link to JT Sports channel also in the description. It's a good point to pause and say all that stuff. Thank you again for being on. But you wanted to include this topic along with another one that we'll get to. Why did you want to talk about this? Like, do you think they're going to be dead forever? Or is this kind of like a setup to no, I think Rhule is going to like destroy the conference or somewhere in between?
I don't want to say he's going to destroy the conference, but every time I listen to Matt Rhule talk, I just like the dude so much. Just the way he talks, I don't know if he's really like this behind the scenes when the cameras are off, but he does a good amount of appearances on Pat McAfee. He's a really good speaker, and he just sounds like a really genuine guy. He's honest, he's upfront with you. You're not going to get side pieced or blindsided with them. And with getting Dylan Raiola, if he ends up reaching his potential and he becomes like the best quarterback in college football, Nebraska has been dead for so many years. Is Dylan Raiola the dude coupled with Matt Rhule who helps resurrect Nebraska football from the pits of irrelevancy in college football?
I don't know. And I just say that because I haven't seen Rhule win a conference title or reach the playoff, but that's because he coached college football in a different era. He coached at Baylor, Temple, then went off to the NFL, and he comes back. It's like, oh, well, this is like kind of a blend of both worlds now. Except, yeah, I don't know why he didn't work out in the NFL. I just think that knowing who he is and reading some of the practice reports of like him being intense with players, I just don't think he has that. It takes a different type of relationship, more, I think, business-like to work in the NFL, and I think Rhule's almost too passionate for that. But Raiola could be Trevor Lawrence. I mean, I'm not saying he is, or I'm absolutely not making that prediction. I think that would be like that's a once in a eclipse or once in a blood red moon thing. But he could be. He has that level of talent, and they return a lot on the O-line. They return their tight end, Fedoni, who's finally healthy. They brought in Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair to help out with Isaiah Garcia-Castaneda, wide receiver. their running back room, if healthy, I've always liked Ramir Johnson. Gabe Irvin Jr. is a hammer. And Emmett Johnson emerged out of nowhere last year. I mean, the offense was just horrific, and I do think that the O-line is broken as long as its players consist of mostly Frost recruits, but that's just temporary. The defense, the defense is probably going to be a top 10 unit in football this year, regardless of what the offense is, because they return a ton, and Tony White is a stud, and the fact that they retained him is huge. It's encouraging though. I thought that you were gonna go the direction of they're dead. Like just maybe kick them back to the Big 12 and watch everyone just beat up on them. But no. It kind of sounds like
Don't put them in the Big 12. I need the Big 12 as weak as possible so we can get our Colorado Cinderella story.
yeah. Although hey, Colorado beat them last year, and in retrospect, it's kind of like, huh? Like how'd they do that? And then you look at Jeff Sims not being able to handle a snap, and that, well, there you go. That was horrible. They should have never kicked Casey Thompson. They basically said you can't compete for the starting job.
Casey Thompson was no better at FAU, my brother. I seen it in person. He tore his ACL in the first game.
I mean, if he can stay healthy, this is probably a ridiculous opinion of mine, but I don't think
He went back to Texas on the side. No, well, not Texas. He went somewhere to become like a grad student.
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
He probably won't play football, but if he was healthy and maybe had a better year last year, I'd argue for him potentially like when Jackson Arnold inevitably looks terrible in the SEC, that they bring him in and like, okay, just take over. We'll train Arnold like the following year. But yeah, I don't think they're going to be dead forever. I don't think that they're going to be back this year, but I think that's everyone's expectation. What do you think their ceiling is? Like this year and in the near future?
Their ceiling for this season, I see Nebraska at most they can win 8 games. Let's say Dylan Raiola does look like the prodigy and he is the truth. Then with some good quarterback play, you at least could start 2-1 going into conference play. You play nobody. I don't even know what UTEP stands for. Northern Iowa's the FCS. That Colorado game might go either way. You play them at home. You had to go on the road and play them last time, so that puts you at a disadvantage. And overall, like you don't really play a lot of like powerhouses in the Big Ten this year outside of Ohio State on the road and USC on the road. All your other games are pretty winnable. Like I don't know about Wisconsin. They could go either way. I think the Luke Fickell rebuild might take a lot longer than what people might initially have thought. And Iowa, like I still don't know if they're going to have an offense, bro. But you will hope that Dylan Raiola can help get them to win.
Yeah. I don't know if they'll have an offense either. I mean, I think it'll be better, and I think Raiola at some point is going to be good. But true freshman behind an O-line that well improved last year is still filled with Turner Corcoran, who hasn't figured himself out, and other Frost players. If he gets beat up too much, you might want to say, "Hey, we don't want to take your confidence anymore. We're gonna do a Paul Christ and run the football 80% of the time." Their schedule is easy. I mean, I could see them going into that Ohio State game 7-0, and with Ohio State kind of being a defensive team, and I have questions about them at quarterback and even O-line, I could see Nebraska being competitive in that game. But I think the Colorado, and then I would say Rutgers and Indiana, that one game before Ohio State, will tell you if this team is different. Indiana's after the bye week, and it's before Ohio State, and that game, especially with Kurt Signetti and his entire staff going over, to me that screams trap game, like right before Ohio State. And Rutgers is tough, and Colorado, they have so many athletes that if the secondary isn't improved compared to last year, you could get a game where, in terms of game control, Nebraska kind of dominated, but Travis Hunter and Shadur Sanders and Dylan Edwards maybe with a better O-line, just get a few big plays. So it's kind of like Iowa State, Kansas State last year, where Nebraska's 40 minutes of TOP, but Colorado wins because one play, 75 yards, touchdown. But I'm inclined to agree with you. Their ceiling isn't Big Ten championship, but I'd go a little higher. I'd say with that schedule, it could go 9-3, max. I'd say 10-2. But that's just my opinion. Um, do you think that Rhule will win a Big Ten championship? It's kind of very speculative, but do you think he will?
I don't think so because you have Oregon, who definitely is going to be top three in this conference for the foreseeable future. USC is such a powerhouse when they get rolling. The only way I see Matt Rhule winning a championship with the way the Big Ten is aligned is if one of those schools has a down year. And even with the break in the schedule, you still got to get through one of them. And you're going to be at a talent disadvantage unless he can get Nebraska to a point where they can consistently recruit and use the portal as much as Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State. And listening to Matt Rhule and all of his interviews, he doesn't really want to use the transfer portal a lot. He wants to build his team from recruiting and only use the transfer portal when necessary to fill necessary holes for right then and there. I believe Matt Rhule will be good enough to get Nebraska back relevant where the fan base can actually have a reason to be happy to watch the team again, and possibly maybe they come close to making it into the college football playoffs. Hell, maybe they got a year when they sneak in, but ultimately, if he can't maximize these next couple of years that he has with Dylan Raiola, his chances are going to be fairly thin. Now, if he can make it work with Dylan Raiola, even if they don't win a conference championship and he can continue to recruit good quarterbacks, that definitely can change. And Nebraska does have an underrated NIL structure, but Oregon, Ohio State, they're just so big of a monster when it comes to NIL and recruiting that you're just automatically at a disadvantage when you play them every time now. So unless you can really get your NIL back in to the point where you can bring in maybe a top 15 class where you got majority of hits in there and you get a good year out of Dylan Raiola down the road, maybe you could possibly pull off that upset. But it's really tough with how the Big Ten is right now when with all these other big schools, if they hit their ceiling and they're chugging on full cylinders, it's really hard to match up with these other schools.
Yeah, my answer to my own question would be undecided. I do think that the former Pac-12 schools will have a little bit of outside of maybe Oregon, I think those other three are going to have a little bit of a painful adjustment in one sense or another. Doesn't mean they can't compete for a playoff spot this year or the next year, but there'll be something that is kind of like, oh, well, that hurt. They're recruiting well, they're utilizing the portal well, and they developed well both defensively and on the offensive line offensively last year. I think Nebraska did. So I think you can go either way. I don't think there's a wrong answer to that right now. I mean, it's hard to have a wrong or right answer when you're speculative. But if you asked me if I thought that Minnesota or Iowa was winning a Big Ten title, I'd just no. Absolutely not. But Nebraska, it's a little more tricky. Thank you so much for watching this episode of College Football with Sam. I appreciate it. And I would appreciate it even more if you were to hit that like button, comment your thoughts on this video down below, hit that big red subscribe button, and also click that notification bell so that your phone, laptop, or whatever device you use can ding or buzz whenever I release new content and notify you about it so that you can watch more videos like this. College Football with Sam is the best Big Ten football channel on YouTube. We're going to be doing a giveaway when we hit 20,000 subscribers, and we're trying to become one of the best, if not the best, college football channels on YouTube. Your support means so much, and to those of you who are subscribed to my Patreon or purchase merchandise from my store, the links to those are down in the description and pinned comment. Thank you so much. I want to give a shout out to my Patreons. Thanks to Crash2488 for being a Heisman member. Thanks to Spencer Bringhurst, Chris Slane, and Connor Little OH for being All-American members. And thanks to Will Loftus, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, and Janisha Cockrell for being All-Conference members. Have a great day, guys. And if you're listening on Spotify or any non-YouTube podcast platform, please check the link in the channel description to find my YouTube channel. And if you're listening on YouTube, feel free to check out my Spotify, if you so please. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.